Hello out there, everyone. Welcome back to the channel. Today, I'm very pleased that I have an old friend. We've known each other for quite a few years now, and he's been on the scene quite a while now, a bit long in the tooth with all this stuff, a little bit like myself. So we have Mark Devlin of djmarkdevlin.com on the show. Mark is also an author, namely of the books Musical Truth. And yeah, DJ and excellent researcher and great body of work. Got a YouTube channel and everything else, so check that out. Mark, welcome back. How are you doing?
Hello, Tony. Well, I'm telling everyone not to use that question anymore. So that question is out of bounds for everyone I speak to from this point on. But it is good to connect with you after all these years. As you say, we go way back. I'm on my 173rd anniversary of doing this. Can you believe it?
173 podcasts.
No, 173 years.
Oh, 173 years. Or is it
Well, that's how it feels anyway.
173 lifetimes, maybe? I mean,
Yeah, it probably is. Probably is.
who knows how many times we've been recycled back to this place. So
All I
yeah,
know is this is the last.
yeah, that's for sure. Last Timers Club. So yeah, so I mean, we're going to get into it today. The whole Big G, the man upstairs, or however you want to refer to him as, even like the universe. There's so many names for this kind of energy or deity that people talk about. But I just wanted to ask you first of all, like, what has been your perception of kind of God up until now when you started to research like the soul trap or soul trick. Where did you kind of stand on it?
Well, I started out attending a Christian school, a C of E school, when I was little. So we were taught in lessons about Jesus and God and the Bible, and we went to the church across the road for services at Christmas and things like that. Then, when I got to my teenage years, I just didn't really think much about it. Then I had an experience when I was about 19, which caused me to start questioning the true nature of this place and God and what we are and what we're doing here. And that led me to attend a Christian church for 4 years, an evangelical church. And I left that period having become very bitter, very disillusioned with a lot of the hypocrisy that I'd seen with the people that attended the church. And I found that that experience left me with more questions than answers. So I decided that religion was not for me. And it actually caused me to become an atheist. I was very bitter. I was an atheist for about 15 years. I truly believed there was no purpose to anything and it was all just random. So we might as well just enjoy ourselves and make the most of it while we're here. And then when I became a truther, so to speak, started looking into conspiracies and alternative subjects, it led me down this path that I think many truth seekers go down. There's almost a de facto religion or spiritual belief system within the so-called truth community. And that teaches these new agey sort of ideas, which I know you've exposed on your channel for a very long time. The idea that there is a meaning to our lives and that actually we consented to everything that we're going through because it helps our souls to evolve and grow. So you get the idea that you agree in spirit soul form before you come here to undergo these experiences. And at the time, I allowed myself to be led along that path because so many other authors, researchers, truth seekers were espousing those same ideas. So I was like, okay, well, I guess religion is obviously bullshit. It's mind control. So this is the alternative. This is the real spiritual truth. And so I clung on to those ideas for many, many years. And it's not until relatively recently that I've started challenging even those. And I've now reached the point where I see all of that as yet another lie, yet another cul-de-sac, yet another method of deception to explain what this realm really is, what these lives really are, what really created it. It's a way of gaslighting truth seekers. It's a way of feeding them false information that is intended to keep them from seeking the real truth. And the real truth of these matters is, as you'll know, not too comforting. It's not very fluffy. It's not very happy. And because of that, you need some real mental fortitude to be able to deal with these ideas, which is why so few seem to go down this road. But the ideas I know we're going to talk about today are really gaining traction in these times. And many are, it seems, prepared to go down these often very unwelcome routes. So I feel quite frustrated and quite angry that for so many years I labored under this false delusion that so many others had sort of coerced me into. But at the end of the day, we are responsible for our own thoughts, actions, deeds, spirituality, and you can't blame anyone else. So I made a mistake, and now I'm trying to correct that.
Mm. Yeah, you're definitely right about the mental fortitude that you mentioned there. I think many people, at least not within religion, they use God, the universe, religion, whatever, as kind of a something that they can lean into to make themselves feel better and to be able to cope with this place. Because, you and I, we don't dress this place up to anything other than what it really is, which I believe is just we're cows on a farm, and we're food for entities, and so we need to have all this suffering and trauma to generate this energy for them. And I think this is why you get such a backlash of hate for calling this out or telling it like it is, because it's such a triggering subject for people. I mean, it's almost like people can take it that maybe their politician isn't what they thought, but when you mention God or something like that, it's almost like it's too much. So the mental fortitude is very important, and it's key to developing that, to be able to take these concepts on, because otherwise you're going to stay in what I call these kind of like false awakenings, which you mentioned there, like the new age and everything like that.
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to ask you, something that I've been thinking about recently, is that, you know, you hear the word consent a lot. We should just not consent the here, not consent in the astral. But it seems to be that they don't really care about that, or this God doesn't really care about that. What's your opinion on that?
Yeah, it's a tricky one because we hear that consent is key to everything. And the reason that we've got human slavery is because large numbers of people are just putting up with it and are not kicking up a fuss, not putting up any kind of a fight. But I wonder if large numbers did, if it really would make a difference. We saw a little bit of it during COVID here in the UK. So I was on most of those London marches in 2020 and 2021. And the ones in spring 2021 were incredible. It was way in excess of 1 million people who were out on the streets of London sending a very direct message to the British government and anyone else that was watching that we're not having this. We don't want to live like this. But what difference did it really make? I think it stemmed the tide a bit, and things probably would have been a bit worse in this nation if those events hadn't happened. But ultimately, the so-called globalists, the so-called elites, are just going to push on regardless.
Mm,
And then when you take it to a spiritual level, through a lot of the work that you've done and videos you've put out with near-death experiences, many of them tell the tale that when they find themselves in the astral, they're getting tricked by these entities and they're being, in some cases, forced back into their bodies. I know
hmm.
there was one experiencer that spoke of being stuffed back into her body.
By God.
So, yeah. So, right. So, where's the consent there? It leads me to think that you have to reach a point during your research that you do while you're in human form so that you can take that knowledge with you into the astral, armed for whatever you're going to experience there. And I think the common denominator with so many of these near death experiences who end up back here is that they've not done that kind of research in their lifetimes. So they're rife for manipulation, which is why they're so easily tricked
Mm,
into coming back. And that probably happens with reincarnation as well. So if you don't come back into the body you've just left and the body gets revived somehow and you actually die, then you get coerced into coming back in a new body, in a new human experience. And I've got to the point where I think the only way to avoid that is by arming yourself with the knowledge now. And that's why information of this nature and videos of this nature and being prepared to go there with this subject matter is absolutely vital if you don't want to find yourself spat back out in this shithole hell world to have another go round on the bloody merry-go-round, you know?
Mm.
So for me personally, I have zero interest whatsoever in any way in ever coming back to this place ever again. So whatever, can I be any more emphatic? You know, can I be any more
Are you
insistent about
saying
it?
you don't like it here, Mark? I'm kind of getting that that vibe from you.
Oh, is that how it comes across? Oh, sorry about that.
One
Yeah,
thing
it's not the best place, is it? I mean, I realize that now. If you were speaking to me in the mid 90s, then I'd have a different take on it because I'd have
yeah.
been out partying, DJing, loving life, loving music, chasing girls, and I'd say, yeah, life is fantastic, but it ain't the 90s anymore.
The other thing that I've been thinking, along with the whole consent thing, because I've been researching about stuff that goes on into the astral, like being stuffed, and I just did another breakdown where the woman was pushed by her guide, like literally pushed back into the tunnel, back into the body. So
What a
this
guide, eh?
yeah, this got me thinking about, well, hang on a minute. It seems like maybe it's more than just consent. This is like this is now violence, right? And I'm thinking, are we just are humans in general? I think our natural state of being is, I think, without all this BS to put up with, I believe it, and having to survive, make money, and all the stuff that we need to do. I believe that we would just be joyful. I think that's our natural state. But we have all this trauma and all this stuff going on, and I think we are, by our inherent nature, just very trusting in general. And I think that is our downfall. I think the words that have been coming to me strongly that we're too nice. And I'm not saying that we should be out there being assholes. I don't mean it like that, but we need to. I think we just generally need to be tougher mentally, and like you say, be prepared for whatever.
Yeah. I do agree that the majority of people, if they're not psychopaths, sociopaths, narcissists, and obviously there's a small number of them in the world, but most people are basically decent, basically good. They want to be good. They want to help others if they can. They don't want to do any harm. It's just that these lives are so difficult, and many people find themselves on the rat race and they've got to make money and be competitive and all of this. So it does force them into certain behaviors which aren't necessarily great for others. But at their root core, I think most people are basically good. So that is our default position, I would say. There are other researchers, Mark Passio springs to mind, who are fairly harsh on the so called NPCs, normies, the masses, and they'll lay into them and they'll say the problem with everything that's going on in this world, the problem with slavery, the reason we've got our rights and freedoms being taken away is because of the actions of people. And I would say, no, it's not that. It's because people have been coerced into that by the so called elites, by the so called rulers of organized society. They're the ones we need to be getting mad at in this realm. But of
Mm.
course, it goes beyond this realm as well to whatever entity created it. But I think the key to everything is that as humans, we like comfort. And it's not hard to comprehend why that would be, but people just like cozy, comfortable lives. And they don't want the boat rocked. They don't want things made difficult. And again, it's totally understandable. And that's why it was such a difficult task trying to get people during the COVID years to wake up to what was really going on. And you had so much denial, and people would say, no, no, it's just about keeping us safe. And, you're a crazy conspiracy theorist and a anti-VIA and all this sort of stuff. And probably that's the case when we depart these bodies and go to whatever lies beyond. People just want a cozy, comfortable option. And that's why they allow themselves to be tricked and deceived so easily, it would seem, by these entities, call them archons, if you will, or whatever name you want to put on it, who will try and convince them that they need to come back. We get these messages, oh, you've got unresolved karma, and you need to go back and settle this feud you've had with your family members and stuff. And there's more work. You've got a mission to complete. There's more to contribute. And it seems like the cozy, comfortable option because the alternative to that is to say, no, not doing it, not having it, not going into that white tunnel of light. And I've got one behind me right now, just by pure happenstance, but to walk the other way. And again, I think that is going to take a great deal of mental or spiritual fortitude to deny these beings, if that's what we're going to encounter, deny them what they're trying to get you to go into and walk the other way. And it's only those that have done the work while they've had the time that are going to be able to do that. So we can consider it a privilege, I guess, that we're living in an age now where it's possible to research this stuff and know these things, because prior to the internet, it was virtually impossible unless you wanted to go into libraries and go through obscure old books and things like that. So this knowledge is available now to anyone that chooses to seek it. And there are people on this path. I get a lot of emails now every week from people saying that the information I've been putting out, the videos and such, really resonate with them
Mm.
and that they're on a similar path. So it is great that so many now seem to be asking these questions and rejecting all the stuff that we've been fed, including these more new agey spiritual ideas that unfortunately seem to be embraced by a lot within the so-called truth community.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right about people just wanting comfort and that kind of feel-good factor. And even within alternative media, there's still many people that really kick off when you start mentioning this stuff because they want to believe that all the coercion and all this BS just ends, in this lifetime, and then we go and we have that peaceful death and Granny's there and all that kind of stuff.
Fluffy unicorns and rainbows, right?
Yeah, yeah. So it really is pushing people to that next level, right out of their comfort zone, which takes effort. And there's a grieving process with that. I've spoken about that on my channel, where, as you mentioned before, you think it's the new age way of we're here learning lessons. Then you come across this, and you're like, so the BS just gets started really at the end of this. And so there's that grieving process, which can take a good couple of months. So you can see why people veer away from it. And then, of course, they'll say that, it's all negative and yada, yada, and they want to be stuck in, just like spiritually bypassing information because it doesn't feel good to them. So it really is a challenge for people to get there. So, um, I wanted to read this before we got on. I was looking up the word omnipotent, right? Because I always struggle to say it, and we're told that God is omnipotent. And I just read you this, and I want you to break this down for me. So, omnipotence means God is all powerful. This means God has supreme power and has no limitations. Omniscience means God is all knowing. This means God knows everything, including the past and future. So, what do you think about that in terms of, the God that we all put our hope and faith in and prayers? And do you
Yeah.
think that's an accurate statement there?
All right. Let me get into that one. So, going back to my previous point about consent, what we hear about in spirit soul form in the other realm, we agree to come into these lives. So, through my research into the music industry, I've come across the subject areas of trauma-based mind control of the MK Ultra variety and satanic ritual abuse. So, children who are unfortunate enough to be born into one of these families are going to undergo horrors which are difficult to even imagine. I've spoken to survivors of SRA, satanic ritual abuse, and their stories are just unbelievable. I'm not saying I don't believe them. I'm just saying that
Yeah,
they are so harsh and so difficult to deal with that the average person just wouldn't be able to cope with it. And I don't know how these people survive what
no,
they say they've been through. So imagine that for a moment. We're supposed to believe that those children chose that. So they could have had a nice childhood with loving parents, and they did lots of fun things, and went on holiday, and had loads of friends and had a really nice life. But instead, they said, no, no, my soul needs to grow and evolve. I need to learn lessons. I need to know what it feels like to be sexually abused. I need to know what it feels like to go through all this horrific stuff, which I won't go into the detail because we can all imagine what it consists of. Really, who is going to make that kind of decision, honestly?
Mm.
And we can expand that out and ask, if God is caring, if God is benevolent, as we prefer to think of him or it as being, what kind of God would allow that sort of suffering? Look at this world that we find ourselves in. It consists of fear, pain, suffering, trauma, and death. It always has. There's never been a point in known human history where there's not been huge suffering, hardship, war everywhere, famine, poverty. It's everywhere, all the time. So if God or consciousness splits itself into these individuated units and comes into this realm to learn lessons, wouldn't it have learnt by now what it feels like to be an SRA child? Wouldn't it say, okay, yep, got that lesson. I know how to cope with trauma and I know how to deal with these horrific things. Got that lesson, I can move on. Why does the same process have to be repeated over and over and over again if it's all just about learning a lesson? What about animals, living sentient beings? So let's throw them into the equation. Let's take chickens that go to a slaughterhouse and undergo all the horrors that go on there. At what point does consciousness say, okay, I know what it feels like now to be a chicken that goes to its death in an abattoir. We can move on now and learn a new lesson. Why does the lesson have to be repeated billions and billions and billions and untold billions of times over? That to me does not suggest that we have a loving, benevolent, caring God. It suggests the opposite, that whatever entity, whatever force created this realm, created it specifically and deliberately to cultivate the fear, pain, suffering, trauma, and death that we see everywhere. I know that's a horrific thing for people to contemplate. I know we would prefer it to be something different. I know it's not nice. I know it's not comfortable, but it is what it is. I didn't make it that way. You didn't make it that way. So all these people that get mad at the likes of us doing videos and podcasts like this, pointing this stuff out, really need to direct all that energetic anger towards the force that actually created this. Get mad at so-called God. And I want to make it clear that I'm not talking about the original creative force behind everything, because
So let,
clearly there was one. We can see that from the fact that there is existence, from the fact that anything exists at all. That's why atheism makes no sense. And I can't believe that I fell for that one. But you live and learn, as they say. So clearly there was an original generative creative force, and that's the one that I think we should be applying this God label to. It's clear that whatever force created this realm was not the original God, and there's no love and no benevolence involved whatsoever. Just wickedness and contempt and ill intent. So it is difficult, and that's why so many people want to go there. But if we're going to be honest with ourselves, we have to admit that this is a place of suffering, and it's not very nice. Terrible things happen. That's because this is not our home. We don't belong here. Somehow we found ourselves here. We don't really know how because we come without any kind of user manual. We undergo this memory wipe. So again, where's the value in that? These same people that will tell you we're here to learn lessons and our souls need to evolve and grow. How are you supposed to learn lessons when your bloody memory gets wiped and you find yourself here not knowing how you got here, what this place is, what created it, to what end, where it all ends up? It makes no sense. There's no value to that whatsoever. And I'm just tired of hearing it. I'm tired of hearing all these authors and researchers and speakers just blurting out all that twaddle,
Mm,
which might make people feel good and fluffy, but it doesn't ultimately help us get to the crux of the issue
absolutely.
of why we're here. What is this place?
Yeah. Mate, that was such a good rant. I couldn't have put
It
it
was
better.
a bit of a rant, yeah.
No, I couldn't have put it better myself. I mean, it felt like I was speaking, and I'm the same. I get so frustrated when I hear people trying to pass this place off, or they sort of half-heartedly, and we got to call a spade at this point, and yeah, it's just the if you're going by the fact that God is omnipotent anyway, then he already knows what it is like to feel what it's like to be an SRA victim. None of this makes sense. None of it adds up. And so yeah, it really is a crazy place. I remember when I was a child, just being in like the playground. My earliest memories, like looking around, like people getting bullied, like just feeling completely lost. Like, what am I here? Like, what is this place? I just always felt, and I think most of us in this community have always felt like a total black sheep, not really knowing what we're here, why we're here, what we're doing. We're born into this world. We're thrown into school, and we have to go to work, and it's just, and then you die. I mean, it just doesn't. None of it makes sense. So, yeah, you're absolutely right, and on that fact. Um, so the obvious question that people uh, then ask is then I feel that there's a deep abandonment wound in people when you say they just feel completely abandoned. That's why it's hard for them to get their head around it. They feel abandoned by God, if you like. So where would you say, or what would you say is like the true creator? I have my own thoughts on this, or do you feel that we have an aspect of that in ourselves, or
We do. And what gives me hope in that regard is simply the fact that most of us, again, psychopaths and sociopaths aside, have a conscience. So, where does that come from? We inherently know the difference between right and wrong. We know the way we should be treating others. And when we treat others in a way that we shouldn't be, it bothers us. Most people, we get that nagging feeling inside us and we reflect on it and we think, yeah, shouldn't have done that, really. And again, I feel most people, if they can, will help others because it's just something that comes naturally to them. Since I've embarked on this path of research, although it might seem I've become more bitter, and yes, I guess I have, but I think it's actually made me a better person. So there's a real sort of apparent contradiction there. So I think I'm even kinder and even more compassionate towards other people and other living things because I recognize that we're all kind of being held captive in this louche farm, this bloody hell world, and we're all suffering together. So it makes sense to try and support each other and help each other through this situation, doesn't it? There's not much we can do about it. I don't feel that this realm can be fixed. So people will say, oh, we need to fix all the problems in the world and make this place better. I think there's a certain degree to which you can make things slightly better, but you're never going to completely fix it because the entire nature of this realm is that it was set up to cultivate fear, pain, suffering, trauma, all the rest of it. So, an analogy you often hear is that of a video game. And I personally feel that this is some sort of simulation controlled by an AI type
yeah,
technology. And people call it a matrix. And I think there's some validity to that. It's like a digital construct. But if
mhm,
you imagine a video game, I'm real old school here. I don't play video games, but uh, I can remember in the early 80s, there was this very crude sort of prototype video game called Space Invaders. So let's imagine it's 1981 and you're playing Space Invaders. And halfway through a game of Space Invaders, you're like, oh, I don't want to play Space Invaders anymore. I want to play Pac Man. So I'm going to change the game to Pac Man. You can't do it. Why? Because it's been coded to be Space Invaders. It comes with its own rules, and you can't operate outside those rules. So you can't make it Pac-Man because that's a totally different game. So in this realm, it is what it is. You can't make it a blissful utopia, much as you'd like to, much as we strive towards that, because of the way it's been coded, like a video game. It's operating exactly the way it was intended to operate by its creator, which tells you all you need to know about the nature and the intent of the creator. So all that we can really hope to do is to reduce suffering. It's a given that suffering is always going to be here, always has. That's what this place is for. So we're never going to get rid of it, but we can reduce it. And we can achieve that by being as kind as we can, as compassionate as we can. And we might just ease our path through life a little bit more for ourselves and others while we undergo these experiences. And then comes the point when it's all over, or this life is all over, that we have to try and get out of it and make sure we never come back. So I'm saying that we can kind of smooth the way a little bit. And where does all that come from? Where does that desire to do that come from? It comes from our original nature because we are aspects or emanations of original God consciousness. So I don't know what that looks like. I don't know if it's a singular entity or it's a force that you can't really put a label on. I just have faith that it's something which is so much better than what we experience here. That's where we originally come from. So you hear us referred to as divine sparks in certain traditions. And I think that's a fairly accurate way of describing us. So we don't belong here. It's not our home. And we have to do whatever we can during the time that we're here to make it as comfortable as we can, while at the same time accepting that we're never going to be able to fix it. It's broke and you can't fix it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That's where I'm at with it. This is a copy. It's an yeah, like an AI program, and yeah, I do believe that there was like a real version of this, and yeah, we are what we're seeking basically. People say to me all the time, well, where's all the good beings? Where's all the good guides and all that? It's us. It's us in human bodies, as you say. The vast majority of people at their core are good people, and if you're looking around for goodness, then that's what you need to look for. Not some deity or guide or trickster that's going to tell you a few half truths or what have you, and then lead you over a cliff face. Um, so yeah, absolutely. So one thing that I want to go to with you is just talking about how things are set up cruelly here. Again, another really triggering topic for people. It's the human body. I mean, the more I think about the human body, the more I just feel like it's completely set up for what all the things that you just mentioned. Pain. Some people die very long, drawn out, painful deaths, and it just even little things. When you get toothache, why has that got to be so painful? What's your thoughts on just the vessel that we're in?
I got into trouble with a few Christians early on. Imagine that, hey? Who took offense at some of my early videos in my so-called God series. And I was questioning why this realm is the way it is. And they were saying to me, oh my God, excuse the pun, you're questioning the creator, you're questioning God, and you're saying that you could do it better. You think that you're better than God. And I'm like, no, I'm not saying that. I'm not making any claims of that nature. I'm just looking at what's here and the way things are. And I can see so many ways in which it could be improved. And that includes human physiology. So, as you say, the human body is flawed. And it's not that difficult to see how it could have been made so much better if we had a creator that was genuinely interested in our best interests here, had our best interests at heart. So let's be crude about things. The human body needs to intake food as energy, and then it converts it into waste product. And we defecate and urinate to get rid of the waste product. Okay, why is that necessary? Why is it even necessary for any living being to need to consume anything at all? Why could we not have bodies that don't need food or feed off prana, pure air energy? To me, human bodies and bodies of other living sentient beings that need to take in uh, the flesh of other living sentient beings, in the case of the animal kingdom, or need to eat anything at all, is a flawed process. It's a way of leading to more fear, pain, suffering, trauma, death, isn't it? Consider the animal world. So many creatures need to prey on other creatures. I think there's a double meaning to that
Yeah,
word.
interesting word that.
Exactly. Double meanings to lots of words. And so you have predation in nature, and you have living sentient beings murdering other living sentient beings, often in unimaginably horrific ways, which again lead to more fear and trauma on the part of the animal that's being hunted down. It's just a way of ensuring that there's a non-stop supply of this louche energy, isn't it? And then humans needing to eat, in our experience, that involves having to go out and earn money to be able to afford to buy the food that we need. So needing to go out and earn money causes stress and worry, and it's constant anxiety. So it's just a way of keeping all that going. And it didn't have to be that way. So we could have had bodies which didn't need to take food in and then piss and crap it out, couldn't we? Also, we're prone to disease, we're prone to aging. How cruel is that? I
Mm,
mean, people often say, oh, you focus on the negative, Mark, you focus on all the suffering and stuff. There's great joy and happiness in the world. Yes, it's there. I would say not in the same degree that the suffering and the hardship is. The suffering and the hardship always outweighs whatever joy and happiness there is. But let's take the case of a couple who are happily married. Let's imagine they've been together, they were childhood sweethearts, and they got married and they've been blissfully happy together. They've raised children, they've had some wonderful times. There's going to come a point in that couple where one of them dies before the other, unless they're in a car crash or something like that. But what's probably going to happen is one of their bodies is going to decay before the other. And then the one that's left behind is going to have to cope with the grief, the tremendous sense of loss that their loved one is now gone. That to me is just cruel. That's just sheer cruelty.
mm,
So after a lifetime of bliss, at the end of it, they've got that grief and that sadness to deal with. So
mm,
it's all part of the same process. And the fallibilities of the human body are by design because it didn't have to be this way.
mm. Yeah, just the maintenance of it. You've got to think about it all the time. Like now I'm starting, oh my God, I've got to eat again now. It's like it's time to eat again because it's always veering towards starvation if you don't eat. That's its natural direction that it takes. And as you say, just like you can't well, I guess I mean maybe here you could live outside without because it's warm, but you've always got to have shelter to make sure that you're not going to freeze to death or whatever. So and like you say, that comes with having to earn money and all those kind of things. Um, so yeah, and then like you say, it's not only you, but then you got to watch other people suffer. All your your dad, your mum, your brother, your sister. Like so
Right?
so so even if you're healthy, you got to watch their health decline. And the whole thing is very cruel. Isn't it interesting that the word death has the word eat in it? I find
It
that
is
another
interesting. Yeah.
another interesting thing. So, and I think that this is the only realm, or maybe there's other kind of evil matrices like this where we go through that death process. I don't feel like it's a natural thing. It seems to be only in a place like this. and the need to something needs to consume something else to survive. It's like, yeah, kill or be killed.
Did you ever see the movie The Revenant
No.
with Leonardo DiCaprio? Yeah, that came out in 2015. That's a harsh watch. That's hard going, man. But it was on TV a couple of nights ago, so I watched it again. And it's set in 1823. And there's this group of settlers in North America, and they go on an expedition to get pelts, animal skins, because they want to sell them. So they have interactions with the Native Americans whose land they obviously stole. But the central part of the story involves Leonardo DiCaprio's character, who was based on a real guy named Henry Glass, getting attacked by a bear, grizzly bear. So there's this horrific bear attack, which is so difficult to watch, where he's basically torn apart by this bear. I mean, spoiler alert for anyone that's not seen the movie, but he gets his throat ripped out and all sorts. And this guy that he's with leaves him for dead. So he betrays him and he kills his son. Loads of spoilers here. And then it becomes a revenge mission. So DiCaprio's character wants to get even with this guy that's wronged him. So he hunts him down. But along the way, he goes through absolute hell. You know, his body's been torn apart and he's out in the cold. It's snow everywhere and he's got to kill animals to survive. And he comes across this Native American guy that's killing bison. So it's just constant predation, constant death, and so much suffering just to avenge what's been done to him by this other guy. It's a tough watch, but it's a very good metaphor for what this realm is all about. And do remind me to not leave this conversation on this kind of note, because I do want to try and get a bit uplifting towards the end. But I think it's essential that along the way, we do face up to what we find ourselves in and just face facts and call a spade, you know, put all the fluffy bullshit aside. Yes, we all want comfort in our lives, but this is not a very comfortable place. I think it's coded in this way, as I mentioned. I'm very attuned to the idea of this being some sort of 3D simulation, AI simulation. Maybe it is a copy of something that was there before, which was a bit better than this one. And whatever entities were able to create this place just overlaid what was there before with a kind of bastardized version of it. That's possible. Uh, but it's definitely coded in the way that a video game or a piece of software would be. So we've got these analogies that we can use now. We live in an age of technology. And when you talk about wireless internet floating around everywhere, but it doesn't make any sense when it's just floating around the room. It only starts to make sense when it appears on a computer screen in the form of graphics or words or whatever, because the computer is the device that's decoding it into something recognizable. So that seems to be what's going on here. But I think there's a reason why the so called elites, the controllers of organized society, have been able to gain so much power. So this is where you start with conspiracy research. So when you get into all this stuff, most people, I think, start off with learning about secret societies. And they learn that governments don't run the world. You have all these other groups, the Bilderberg Group, the Council on Foreign Relations, the Freemasons, the Jesuits, the Vatican. They're the ones that wield the real power. So they select the presidents and the prime ministers, and they control the military and they control academia and science and the mainstream media, and of course, entertainment, music, films. So you learn about all that. And then you go a few layers down. And if you're bold enough to go there, you get into the question of what this reality really is and what created it and to what end. And that's where we're at. I think all roads eventually lead to that point, no matter what you started with. They all converge to this one singular point, which questions where we're at. But the reason why we have such a small number of psychopaths and Satanists controlling society, as they clearly do, and there aren't many of them, you know, few tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands at most, controlling the lives of billions, is because these individuals have recognized this realm for what it really is. They realize that it's been set up to facilitate fear, pain, trauma, suffering, So they've gone to themselves, well, if we want an easy run through life, guys, we've just got to conduct ourselves in ways that bring more of that. And if we align ourselves with fear, pain, suffering, and trauma, we can dominate and enslave everyone else. So everyone else can suffer, and we'll just glide through life, as so many of them seem to a ripe old age. And then, don't know if you've noticed, but most of them seem to merely pass away peacefully in their sleep one night
Mm.
without any real suffering. Not
Funny that.
suffering that we get to see anyway.
Yeah.
People will say, oh, you don't see what goes on behind the scenes. You don't know what happens on a karmic soul level with them. No, we don't. But from what we can see of them, they seem to do just fine. Let's take Bill Gates as an example. I mean, there's plenty of other names, but we can focus on Bill Gates. He seems to be doing just fine. I mean, I know he's got a big old pair of tits these days and, a big old belly and stuff. He's known as Bill Bitch Tits by the sheep farm guys. But other than that, he's a psychopath. He's crazy, but he's doing okay. He's got a few billion in the bank. He's deceived many, many people into thinking he's a really nice guy, a philanthropist who just cares. He just wants to help other people. That's why he's putting all these arm spears out there, because he just wants to help people's health improve. That's all it is, folks. But he's realized, and those that he aligns himself with have realized what this place is. And so that's why we have the elites, so called. They're basically doing the bidding of the archons, if you want to put that name on them, the entities that preside over this realm. They're helping them to keep this place running the way it was always intended to be run by conducting the behaviors that they do. That goes a long way to explaining just how a small number of them can control the lives of everyone else. Now, I'm not for a second advocating that kind of behavior and suggesting that the rest of us should become like them. Quite the opposite. I'm saying we've got to resist that. But I'm just pointing out that it does explain why we have this ridiculous dynamic where such a small number of people can control the lives of so many others.
Mm. Absolutely, absolutely. And I think just to kind of finish on a positive, they're obviously very concerned about people learning the truth, which is why we have all the censorship and everything like that. So I do feel like this simulation or whatever, we do seem to be at a point now, I don't know if you would agree, where it seems to be we seem to be at like a crossroads where we can actually have this window or use this window to actually get ourselves out of here. Um, what do you think about that?
Some will say that's a selfish point of view. They'll say, oh, you shouldn't just think about yourself, you should think about others. But what I've been saying throughout this chat is that we should do all we can to help others while we're here. We should try and minimize suffering. But ultimately, I think it becomes the personal responsibility of anyone who doesn't particularly like this place to do whatever they can for themselves to ensure that they never have to come back, and try and get this information out to others who you care about and who you would like to take this information on for themselves. It has to be an individual choice. You can't stuff this stuff down people's throats. They have to choose to come to it on an individual basis. But it's important that people are presented with the information so that they can at least arm themselves with that choice. So that's what it comes down to ultimately. When we leave these bodies and we don't know really what happens, we have near death experiences who come back with their stories. But most of these near death experiences, if not all of them, I think you would agree, are what we would describe as normies,
Hmm.
you know, regular folk. I'm not aware of any truther NDEs. Maybe you are, because you've done more work in this than me. Are you aware of anyone that would identify as a truth seeker? They've looked into conspiracies and they realize this world isn't what we thought it was, and they've had an NDE and they've come back into their bodies. Are you aware of any of those?
No, there's a lot of people floating around that have done certain sort of astral travels and things like that. but not so much. There's not someone that's. I think Howdy Mikowski had one actually. He had one back in his younger years. I remember him saying when I interviewed him. I can't remember exactly what he said about it because it's a long time since I spoke to him. But other than that, I can't think of too many others. So, um, but this is where my train of thinking is right now is just in terms of maybe learning, to lucid dream and astral travel to really get a view. I believe the astral realm is just another layer of this matrix. I think we need to get out of the astral altogether, and they've set it up there as they've set it up well there. I mean, they've put on all the bells and whistles when you go there. So for me, my intention is to get completely out of the astral, which I believe to be a part of this matrix. But I don't know of any kind of truth seeker, prominent one at least, that has had an NDE off the top of my head that's out there sharing their stories. I'm sure there's a lot of viewers of this video that will contact me and say I've had an NDE, and I'd be open to listening. But no one
Sure.
out there speaking, I think, is the point.
I think most NDEers that come back into their bodies would have spent a lifetime being tricked and manipulated. So most of them would probably have uh, watched the BBC Evening News or whatever equivalent, and listened to government ministers and listened to all the propaganda and all the bullshit mind control that comes through movies and TV and stuff. So they've spent a lifetime swallowing all of that. So they're rife for manipulation when they cross over. I
Mm.
think that's probably the case in many
Well, I
instances.
think they're intentionally used. Or they're selected to become what I call agents of the matrix. So they have that experience. They're given that wonderful experience where they're shown, guides and all that stuff, heaven or whatever, and then they come back down and they're like, guys, it's great, nothing to worry about. So it's really sad. I mean, it's beyond evil. They're literally selected and being used to promote this agenda back down here, um, and to tell their story, which is because see, I think that they get shown the fake NDE where they're shown the heaven and the guides and everything. But when you look at certain films like Beetlejuice and others, there seems to be another earthly realm in the astral where you really go when you really die, and there's a processing center that you need to sign into, and all that stuff. And so there's souls that are being enslaved here and on the other side. So, but that's if you go to that light tunnel. So there's two places. There's the NDE fake realms within the astral that they show people that they come back down and promote, and then there's the real place that people really go to. So that's the other thing that people need to research and be aware of.
Yeah. Just be like Zamo from Grange Hill back in the day. Just say
Yeah,
no.
yeah,
Reference there
exactly.
to people of my generation. I've got another question, though, Tony, about all this. So, if this realm was created by some sort of lesser god, demiurge, some bloody satanic, demonic entity, where was the original god of creation when this was taking place? And given that this place has been running for a very long time. Nobody knows exactly how long, but it's a bloody long time. It's been a lot of suffering, a lot of trauma, a lot of really bad stuff has happened in this realm. Why has it not been shut down by now? People will say, "Oh, free will. God can't just intervene. It's got to be the will of people." Well, how many people do you think have wanted to live like this? How many people do you think want this place to be the way it is? Is that not us expressing our free will? Because a lot of people are very unhappy here. But I just wonder why, if there's an original creative benevolent force out there, and I do actually feel that there is. I'm not trying to deny that. It's a question. I've been asking questions all year through my God videos, and this is just another one.
Mm,
I would, I just ponder why it is that the original creator has not seen this hellish realm and what goes on here, and
mm,
is not severely pissed off at having been usurped by this lesser entity or force or entities that have created this bastardized realm and
Mm.
said, enough is enough. I'm shutting this place down.
Yeah.
It's a question. I don't have the answer, but
Well,
it's a
yeah. I
question.
mean, it's a good question because again, if we take the basis that the real God is also omnipotent and benevolent and all the things that you associate with God, it begs that question. Even if this is a fake copy, an AI, if God's the real God's all powerful, where is it?
Mm.
Um, I think, like we said earlier, I think we have a spark of essence within us. There is um, there is this theory that many of us came back at this time to actually help with that process to bring it down.
I've
That's
heard that one. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I've always felt like you know, I've always ever since I woke up, I always felt like it's more than just getting out. I want to help bring this down, like not change it, like you say. I don't think it can be changed. We're not going to have 5D New Earth. We're not going to wake up to that. But I think uh, helping along with others to educate and liberate the souls to get them to think more sovereign and not to say I'm better or you're better or whatever, but just to play a part in that process with others to get people into a more sovereign mindset and to because remember so many people have been through memory wipe, memory wipe, memory wipe, memory wipe, and I think the more memory wipes a person goes through, the more difficult it is for them to see through things. So maybe there's a whole group of us that came in and decided to come in and bust this place up and when souls coming out are getting out of here, it's almost like you're taking the batteries out of the AI, because we power this thing. So the more batteries that come out, wouldn't it stand to reason that the whole thing starts to shut down? So maybe
Mm.
that is what's going on. And again, we are the thing that we are searching for. We are that aspect that's coming in to change this,
Mm.
which comes back to self again. So, but yeah, if there is like a wider, greater God that we came from, like, wh where is it? I understand the question, and I
It's a
don't.
question, and I don't imagine anyone will be able to easily answer it. But I
Yeah.
do wonder why it is that certain individuals, such as us and many that will be watching this, kind of get it. We wake up to these things and we start paying attention and we question. And we're always in a minority, of course. We've always been in a minority in society. So there's something about us. And I don't know if it's because on a spirit soul level, we decided to come in and make things better here. I don't particularly go with that, but it's a suggestion that people have. But something has got to explain why it is that the likes of us question these things. There's a few common denominators because I have a lot of conversations with people now of this nature. I get emails every day. I respond to comments left on my video channels. I go to conferences and get into face to face conversations with people. And what you often find is people will say, uh, people that are on a similar path to us, oh, I never felt like I fitted into this place. They'll say, when I was a kid, I was a loner at school and I used to shut myself away in my room and I just never was into stuff that other kids were, never really felt a part of society. And that's the way it was for me. I was a bit of a hermit, bit of a loner, just like doing my own thing. And that's something you hear so often. So it seems that with many of us, almost from birth, we know that there's something wrong with this place and we know we don't belong here. And that's why we have such a hard time operating here. And maybe that's why we feel stirred and galvanized and motivated into doing whatever we can with our time to
Mm,
try and help others and like you say, we can't fix this place because it's unfixable, but we can minimize the suffering a little bit. So many of us make that our life mission. And something's got to explain why we choose to do that, but most of the normies out there don't. So
mm.
I'll go into a Weatherspoons pub and I see other guys sitting around having a laugh, talking about the football. Somebody will walk in, you old bastard, come on over and have a pint. And they're just laughing and they haven't got a care in the world. And I
Do you
think,
ever feel
why am
jealous?
I?
Do you ever feel
Yeah,
jealous
yeah,
of
yeah. In some
of
ways,
their
I do.
ignorance?
In
Yeah,
in
me
some
too.
ways, I do. You know why? Because they're happy.
Exactly. Yeah.
They're happy.
Yeah.
They're happy with football. They're happy with their friends. They're happy with having a conversation about nothing in particular. They don't realize anything's wrong.
No. No.
They think everything's fine here.
Yeah.
You know, they're going to have to undergo suffering in their lives. They're going to get old. Their bodies are going to decay, like we said earlier, at some point. But for now, everything seems fine to them. And I just wonder why we're different to them. What makes us different? How have we been able to tear that veil down and see what lies behind it? And
Mm.
these other people haven't, or the will hasn't been there. They've just not wanted to. Maybe we're older souls. I don't know. Maybe we've
Well,
been here a few more times than them. So we're a bit more evolved. Or maybe we've been tricked so many times that we're bloody sick of it now. And maybe they've got those lessons to learn still. Uh, I
I
don't know.
think the NPC phenomenon is real. I think if this is a computer game, a simulation, just like in a computer game or simulation, you have the fill-in people, and they're the characters that uphold the Matrix and the Agent Smiths and stuff. But I
So that
think
raises the question, does an NPC realize that they're an NPC?
um, you would think not. You would think not.
Maybe they're the ones in
I
Weatherspoons then.
Yeah, I asked the question on one of my live streams, can consciousness permeate an NPC? So can you be an NPC and then wake up enough to where you start I don't know, you move in line with consciousness or whatever, and then you start carving your own path. Because when I look back at my former self, I've always felt strange here and like you say, never fit in, school was difficult, everything like that. But my 20s, 30s, it's football. I'd be out with my friends. I like
Raving.
partying. Yeah, I would say I was kind of like an NPC. So, but I'm not now, and so I'm wondering, was I an NPC that consciousness permeated, or did I just need to wake up from being in like a dreamlike state? But these are questions that we can ponder forever on.
That's right.
So yeah, it's
I used to be like that as well. I mentioned the 90s earlier. I had an absolute blast in the 90s. I was really loving life. I
yeah,
was a DJ, I was going out to clubs. The only things that mattered to me were music, clubs, partying, girls. That was it.
yeah,
So I was in an NPC mindset as well, but something happens to some of us to
mm,
shake us out of that, but evidently doesn't happen to most. So if there really are NPCs embedded in society, that would suggest that there's just a relatively small number of us who are the real players.
yes,
So
yes.
all of this is to facilitate our experiences. And you've got these vast numbers of people who are there for no particular apparent reason other than to be backdrop
And
people.
to annoy us. I mean, I
This is
talk
the
about it all the time. I'll go out and I'll move to a new place, and the neighbor will move next to me and start throwing parties on a Monday night, or it just wherever I go. It seems the more you become aware of the phenomenon, the more you see it. I'll sit down in a cafe. Like every single time I sit down in a cafe now, someone will come and sit on the table next to me, even though it can be relatively empty, either with a screaming baby or blaring out music on their mobile.
playing reggaeton. I know you love that.
Yeah, yeah, I do like reggaeton, but when I want to listen to it, not when it's forced upon me. So, um, but if you imagine the source players that we're the soul beings, we're the energy generators, right? So the NPCs maybe they don't generate the energy in the same way that we do, the food, the loosh. And so when we get annoyed by these things, and then we're creating more loosh for the system. So and maybe that's why I always describe an NPC as someone that lacks curiosity. They just don't have that. Why is things like this? We see all the things going on. Why is there war all the time? Why there just seems to be that lack of curiosity, and like you could sit them in front of a documentary for 24 hours explaining the true nature of reality, and they'll still call you a conspiracy theorist at the end of it. So
I've had that experience. I can remember many years ago when my daughters were very little. I was walking home with the mother of another child one summer afternoon, and there was spraying overhead. Surprise, I know. And I was getting really pissed off because it was crisscrosses through the sky. And I said to this woman, uh, "Doesn't this piss you off? Aren't you annoyed at this?" And she just sort of laughed. She went, and I
Yeah.
said, you know, what they're doing in the sky, spraying all this stuff. She was like, I've got to go now. And she wouldn't even look up. She
Yeah.
wouldn't even look at the sky to see what
Yeah.
I was talking about. She just made her excuses and left.
Yeah.
So they just won't look at it. People won't look at it. Think of
Yeah.
the fight scene in the movie They Live when Rowdy Roddy Piper has to beat that black guy to a pulp, beat the shit out of him to
Yeah.
force him to put on the glasses to see what's really going on.
But
That's a
then when
really
he
good
put the
metaphor, I
glasses
think.
on, he saw it, didn't he? Finally, he saw it. So
Yeah, but he was forced to. He had to be
yeah, he was
forced
forced
to do
to.
it.
Yeah, yeah, I know. Great stuff, Mark. I think well, we don't have all the answers, but we I think that's part of this process.
We have
Hope
all the
we
questions.
have all the questions, yeah. But I think really breaking down the whole God deception is key, and it's not going to make you popular, but it's going to it's at least it feels that you're saying, you know, the truth of things. And I think, like you said earlier, there's a lot of people out there that want to flower this up as somewhere that it's really not. And I think we need to hold this God character accountable for for his creation, certainly the one of this matrix anyway.
I kick it in the balls metaphorically every single day.
The other thing is, right, sorry, I'm going that you know they record everything, right? Like these when you go for the life review, your whole life is recorded. So when you're taking a dump or you're, you know, being intimate with someone or what, like where no one asked me for that. No one ever questions that. These NDEs, they don't even question that. It's crazy the things that they've done here, and continue to do here until now at least. So anyway, Mark, I want to thank you so much for coming on and being very candid and blunt, because that's how I am as well. And yeah, where can people find you?
So my hub website is djmarkdevlin.com, and there's links from there to all my other platforms. My videos are on YouTube, still fifth channel, BitChute, Odyssey, and Rumble. I've got audio on Spreaker, and I've got two regular podcast series. Good Vibrations is my speech-based one, and The Sound of Freedom is conscious message music. And there's also my so-called God videos. And I've got a new YouTube channel actually called Mark Devlin God Talks, which is where I host all of those. So I want to thank you for having me on, Tony. It's been a very cathartic discussion today. I've enjoyed getting some of this stuff out. And I do really just want to leave things on an inspiring, positive note because it can seem very hopeless when you get into all this material. But if you and I both felt that there was no hope at all, and we just thought, well, what's the fucking point of any of it? We wouldn't be doing these shows, right?
Mm,
We'd have just given up.
yeah.
So obviously, we feel that there's something worth striving for, and there is something positive out there ultimately to aim towards. I certainly feel that this force that's created this place is one of evil and malevolence, but it's in counter, it stands counter to what was originally there before it, which is the default position of creation, I feel, is goodness and love and joy. It's just been uh, hijacked and usurped by this place and what created it. So our ultimate aim is to get back to that original source, God consciousness. And if I didn't believe it was out there and I didn't believe it was good and it was worth striving for, I would have given up long ago and I wouldn't waste my time doing any of this.
Yeah.
So the fact that we
You're
do,
just being Weatherspoons talking about football.
I only wish I could. I sometimes wish I could have conversations like that and just not care about anything. But
For those that are watching that aren't from the UK, Weatherspoons is probably like the most decrepit chain of pubs in the
yeah, but it's
UK. Would
bloody
you
cheap beer though.
say? It's like there's a lot of NPCs in Weatherspoons. Sorry to anyone that's
The,
watching
the,
this
the
in
beer is
Weatherspoons.
cheap and that's the key. That's
Yeah.
why I go there.
Okay, Mark. Well, great. Thanks again. I'll put all Mark's links in the description below. Thanks again for watching, everyone. Don't forget to hit the like, share this around, and we'll see you again soon. Take care.
Cheers.